It's possible you might know a few of these if you played during beta, but I wouldn't expect most of you guys to know more than just a few. Also keep in mind that since a lot of these things come from the beta and alpha of League, footage for a lot of these doesn't necessarily exist at all, but there is proof of all of these things existing in the past patch notes and other various places. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you don't enjoy the video, please click the dislike, and if this video hits, let's say 10,000 ratings, I'll make another one of these. Anyways, let's get started. The first thing is that during the early League of Legends Friends and Family Alpha stage, for a short period of time, you were actually able to deny allied creeps from your opponent by last hitting them, similar to the mechanic that we see still in Dota 2. It was considered to be somewhat of an anti-fun mechanic and so was taken out the second week of the alpha stage. However, Gangplank was able to deny creeps using his Raise Morale when he was released. This was the second case of the creep denial mechanic existing in League, and it took all the way up until patch 1.16, which was about a year and a half later for the mechanic to finally be removed from his kit. There's been no direct forms of killing your own creeps since then, as the mechanic was deemed to just not have a place in League of Legends. The second thing is an old summoner spell that once existed called Stifle. The summoner spell was a point and click that would silence the targeted enemy champion for 3 seconds, and permanently remove all of the beneficial buffs that they had. It would remove things like blue buff, Baron buff, potion healing, Kael's ultimate, Tryndamere's ultimate, and any other thing in the game that was coded as a buff to a champion. It had a cooldown of just 150 seconds, and a mastery to reduce the cooldown by 10 seconds and increase the duration by half a second. Needless to say, it was way too powerful, so it was removed from the game and replaced by Exhaust, which is still in the game today. The third thing was that during the early stages of League, there was a time that champion kills would give 100 gold on Summoner's Rift. At this time, the items cost a little bit less as well, but it definitely wasn't a comparable amount for the income difference, so getting to a full build took much longer than it does today. On the third week of the closed beta, the amount of base gold gained for killing a champion was doubled in an attempt to make kills feel more impactful. In the next patch, a 100 gold bonus was added for first blood, and a few patches later the kill reward was increased to a base of 300 gold. The fourth thing was that during the alpha stage before matchmaking was introduced, League of Legends Summoner's Rift was played as a 4 vs 4 game mode. The first ever video of recorded in-game footage released by Riot shows a 4v4 battle with 3 players on each team randomly duking it out in the mid lane. In the video, they don't actually specifically say whether or not League is 4v4 or 5v5, so it's likely that they had plans to switch to a 5v5 game mode from very early on. A few patches into the closed beta, 5v5 matches were added into custom games, and on the May 29, 2009 patch, normal game matchmaking as a 5 vs 5 game mode became available. It kinda makes you wonder though, what would League of Legends have been like if it had stayed a 4v4 game mode? The fifth thing is that up until the very end of the alpha stage, the red buff monster would silence you when attacking. As I'm sure you can imagine, this made killing him as a jungler pretty weird, and you would have to kite it around to get to use your abilities on it. And this was pretty clunky and felt super weird on ability-focused junglers when clearing the camps, so it was eventually taken out on the 7th week of the alpha stage, and given 60 magic resistance instead as the alternative defense against abilities. Our sixth thing is that in League of Legends, there once was a time where recalling as we know it did not exist. Instead, an item known as the Blue Pill was purchasable from the shop, and would be activated to return your champion back to base. Eventually this was seen as a bit unintuitive since every single character had to buy the item every game all the time, so it was changed to a summoner spell that you would have to select as one of your 2 options. And then again, it was also something that was considered pretty much mandatory to get, and the summoner spell option was found to be a design that just didn't feel fun for the players, to have to sacrifice one of their options, so eventually it was changed to a spell given to everyone, and became an inherent feature to all champions as the recall spell that we know to this day. The seventh thing is that originally Summoner's Rift had no brushes. In the first gameplay video I showed earlier, you can also see on the map that there are no brushes anywhere, not a single one. It wasn't up until the July 10th, 2009 patch that brushes were finally added into the game, and on that patch about twice as many brushes were placed all over the map as there is in the game today. Over time, the amount of brushes on the map was lowered further and further until what we have today, which is actually the least amount of brush that's ever existed in League of Legends. The eighth thing involves minions. I'm sure a lot of you remember that jungle monsters could crit, but during the early stages of League, super minions from lanes were able to critically strike. They had a crit chance of 10%, but the inconsistency wasn't a very good thing, so it was taken out of the game during the early stages of beta, on the April 25th, 2009 patch. But the jungle monsters retained their crit chance for an extremely long time, and it wasn't until the preseason to Season 4 where the wolves could no longer crit, and we finally saw critical strikes from monsters removed completely. The ninth thing is a little bit outside of the box, but I honestly just wanted to include it because I thought it was really cool. There used to be a turret defense League of Legends game for iPhone that was developed by Riot and released in early 2010. League of Legends Turret Defense was an official game made by Riot and was used as a promotional tool for the launch of League. It was a tower defense game where you build and upgrade turrets in order to stop waves of minions, occasionally backed up by a dragon and even a few champions. It was free to play but was taken down from the App Store after just a few months. You might be able to find a download somewhere on the internet, but from what I read, well, it wasn't exactly the best game ever. And our 10th and final thing is that Flash used to have a cast time and a much higher range. At first the cast time was 3/4 of a second, 0.75, which is pretty long, and a range of 900 with a cooldown of 150 seconds. The current range of Flash on the day that I'm making this video is 425 with an instant cast and a 300-second cooldown, so the range back then was more than double what it is today. But due to the cast time, the summoner spell was actually considered a bit weak, since imagine, you could never really use it to dodge abilities. So in the early closed beta, the cast time was lowered to 0.5 seconds, and then eventually removed completely on the June 12, 2009 patch, where on the same patch the range was also lowered to 800. Removing the cast time made the ability overpowered as heck, since it just added so much outplay potential that it would go on to receive nerf after nerf until it reached the point that the ability is at today. And that's